you check the children?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are back to do a review of a new movie that is in theaters, but you might not know it based on how few theaters it's actually in. I don't know why this is the case, because if there's one thing that historically and recently especially has always done well, it's horror. And I don't know why this movie isn't being pushed even into a full theatrical release. It feels like it's just very select theaters. And I don't know of any particular reason why that's happening to a movie called Cobweb. That is what we're talking about today. We recently reviewed the A24 Talk to Me film. Now we're here talking about Cobweb. This is, to be clear, not promotion for the movie. This is us reviewing the movie.
Critiquing, yes.
Critiquing. So we have not been paid in any way to see the movie or review it, but we are choosing to do so because we review movies here on this channel.
Exactly.
That is, we still fully support the strike 100%, and this shouldn't affect any of that at all. So let's jump into Cobweb, Fuego, because I'm excited to talk about this one. There was a movie last year that got an abundance of praise called Barbarian, and this film was not altogether dissimilar from it insofar as it kind of starts out as one kind of horror movie and then it changes a bit into another kind of horror movie, but it's a similar kind of premise to some other horror movies that we've seen and reviewed on this channel previously. So while the idea wasn't altogether original, personally, I preferred the execution of Cobweb over Barbarian. I enjoyed this movie more than Barbarian, and it's my kind of movie. You know me, I'm a creature kid. And while this was kind of that, it just felt like a better version to me of what we've seen in previous films. So I really dug Cobweb as my overall thoughts.
Yeah, this is actually from the producers of Barbarian, so it kind of makes sense a little bit, at least maybe aesthetically and some of the vibes of it. So I'm going to be very clear about this. I loved this movie.
Oh, wow.
Until I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Until I didn't. And
at what point was that?
It's non-spoiler, so
Can you say which act that happened in?
I feel like the movie totally falls apart in about the last 20 minutes or so.
Oh,
and
okay.
that it didn't ruin the movie for me, because I thought from a stylistic standpoint, from a performance standpoint, that's another reason to echo your sentiments, man. The fact that Lionsgate loves doing these limited theatricals, which is what's happening with this movie right now. So they do a limited theatrical, even if there's stars like Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr, who's Homelander.
He's huge.
It took me a minute to realize it was him, and then when he started talking in that dinner scene, the first one, I was like, oh shit, that's right. And also the kid Woody something, that he was in a film called Come On Come On with Joaquin Phoenix a year or two ago, which was excellent. So a lot of talent on display. I thought the teacher, who was Ms. Divine, was really good too. It's a small cast, so greatly acted, and a lot of interesting like shot choices. I loved some of the eerie slow-mo. I loved some of the a lot of the creepy Dutch tilts they were doing and stuff was cool too.
Sound design was really neat.
Yeah, it's solid across the board, but I feel like it devolved into too many things I'd seen before in the last 25 minutes or so, and I also felt like they didn't stick the landing without spoiling the ending. But that's just me personally. There was way more to like than not to like, though. So
okay, that's fair. So the movie itself is about a young kid who lives with his parents and is going to a new school. Did they just recently move into no, they've been in the home for a while. So anyway, the movie starts off with him hearing something in his bedroom wall and like crying out for his parents, and his mom comes and like tells him it's nothing, don't worry about it, it's just a bad dream, go back to bed. But he continues to hear things, and it is a female's voice that he's hearing, a young girl's voice. And she starts to tell him things because it's one of those situations where as he gets freaked out, the parents get more and more angry. So he's, forced into a shell where he cannot tell you know, he can't go to his parents about it, so he just kind of accepts it and starts to communicate, and then from there everything kind of goes wonky and haywire. And I hesitate to go further than that in the story description, other than his teacher, who is a substitute teacher, takes a particular liking to him and wants to make sure that he is safe and protected. His parents come off a bit unhinged at times, and the story progresses from there. And again, I don't want to say anything beyond that, because then it's pretty much into spoiler territory after the first 30 minutes of the movie. Yep. Because things change, you know, a couple times in the film. And I do like movies that do that. Again, Barbarian, I felt like was 3 different movies in the 3 different half hours, you know what I mean?
In a lot of ways.
and yeah, this one was a movie for the first 25 minutes, and then another movie for the next 25 minutes, and then another movie for the last 25 minutes. And I just enjoyed it because I tend to enjoy movies like this. I really liked Boogeyman a lot that we got this year. And that had a, you know, CG heavy chase filled third act. And this was kind of similar to it. And so ultimately the story was pleasing for me. I didn't like, I thought it was simple, and it was only an hour and a half long. I think that personally they probably could have expanded the first 25 minutes a bit to bring us more into the world of the characters than we actually got. It just really cruised. Like the film was not slow by any stretch. It was like things were happening right. Like to me, the like at about the 20-minute mark, I was like, geez, I feel like we're at a place where normally it would take almost like an hour to get to the place we are story-wise right now. And so that's a little bit interesting. I won't say it's kind of weird, but it wasn't a detractor for me. It was like, wow, they're just cruising, and I'm not having as much time to learn and get ingratiated with the characters, but maybe that's because they have something else planned, and they did. And so I was fine with that. So how did you like how the story played?
You know, once again, I was okay with familiarity until in the third act, once again, without spoiling things, where I just felt like it tried to maybe do too many things, or it felt a little too familiar with that. It wasn't a bad twist, though, even though it's something I've seen before. But the tension was built so well in the first 2 acts that maybe the burden of expectation or whatever, like we talk about here on the channel a lot. So, but those first 2 acts, man, especially of course, we've seen the strange oppressive parents dynamic before, but I felt like, and we'll get into it with the acting, but I felt like it was written very convincingly. And I mean, if not for, you know, Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan being so convincing in those 2 roles, I don't know if it would have necessarily played as well. And yeah, we've got bullies at school, but the dynamic with that and the kid, I thought was, you know, believable and well put together. Yeah, I mean, most of my gripes would be spoilers, and so with that I have to kind of back away.
Okay.
But
well,
yeah,
segue
man.
us into acting.
Yeah, the acting was tremendous on all accounts. There was not a single, I mean, maybe the kind of one-note bully a little bit, but even him, man, I mean, especially with something that happens with him and some siblings in the third act, I thought, you know, kind of made sense from a storytelling standpoint. But yeah, Kaplan, you know, she started out with these comedy things like, you know, Party Down, great show, and then, you know, the Time Machine movie that she did with John Cusack and a bunch of other peeps. But she really caught my eye from a dramatic standpoint when she played the young Annie Wilkes in the 2nd season of Castle Rock, and I'm like, okay, this lady has chops, and seeing her as a mom now kind of trips me out a little bit because she doesn't look too different, you know, as far as the aging goes and whatnot. But she was great, and Anthony Starr, he can always bring just this like little subtle menace, you know, and you know, whether Homeland or On the Boys, and he's got lots of other TV work under his belt. But there's a couple scenes, one in particular where the substitute teacher first shows up at the house, where you could cut the tension with a knife, man. He's holding the hammer, and you're just like wondering what the hell is going to go on. So he was really convincing. And there's another dinner table scene in the third act that I thought was just terrific. It has to do with cinnamon, and that doesn't spoil anything. It just drops a little hint that I thought that scene was great. So yeah, I mean, a lot of talent on board, and just to, you know, double down on what you said again, man, I mean, I'm surprised with just familiar faces like this, why Lionsgate wouldn't have wanted to push this a little bit more, because from the acting, I mean, it's great. And Woody the kid, once again, come on with Joaquin is great. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought the kid did a great job holding his own. I mean, that was, it's not the easiest role to do, and he did a great job. Yeah, I think Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan just killed it. I mean, again, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but you can see in the trailer that there's something off about everything, and you don't know if it's the parents or not, and it was just really fun to see how things actually played out. I really enjoyed the fact that they shot them each in a particular way. Like, there was quite a few times there was Anthony Starr was obscuring the light behind him, and so he was silhouetted a lot of times while talking, and it was
of shots,
so cool and ominous, like this just impending force. And you're like, damn, this, like, they're doing a lot of storytelling with the shooting in this movie. So I'll use that to segue into the cinematography, because I agree the acting was top notch throughout. But the cinematography was great. It did some cool things for the storytelling. Like, for instance, where the main character has just found out some information and his world has effectively been turned upside down, and the next scene is a shot of him at dinner with his parents, and it's starting akimbo on its side as it pushes in and twists back to normal. So he's like, he's gotten this information that's flipped his world on its head, and now, because he's back with his family and he has to act normal, it moves and settles back into a straight-on shot of the whole family eating dinner. And I was like, that's some fucking cool storytelling right there. I really appreciate stuff like that.
Yeah, and I loved, even there's a dream sequence at one particular point, and as often happens with these things, they're like, is it a dream, is it not a dream, whatever. But like, he had this bear rug on the ground, and I noticed in the shot the bear rug was spinning, and it's just like, that's really cool.
Yeah, just little additions
clues
for the audience. Yeah, there was a lot of really cool stuff like that. I was really impressed with the filmmaking. You said first-time director?
First-time director, yeah. He'd done some television work and a few shorts and stuff, but yeah, first time with a feature going to any sort of major theaters or anything, and impressive in that regard. And the set design, I thought, was like, it's weird that they're releasing this in July, because if this had released in the fall, especially based on when it takes place storyline wise, right before Halloween, I mean,
it would have done a lot better.
Pumpkin patches were awesome.
This should have come out in late August at the earliest.
Yeah, big time, man. I think it would have played a lot better then, as opposed to getting like swept into the cobwebby corner of the room or whatever. Like, it's kind of happening with it. And that even the slow-mo shot that started off the film just had an essence of ominousness that I think really set the stage pretty well. And even the score, I thought, just helped to set the tone as well. It was almost like a childlike nursery rhyme sort of sensibility to it. And I've seen some people saying this is fairy tale horror. I don't know if I would go
disagree with that.
Yeah, no. I don't. Yeah, I thought that was a weird classification for people to be.
I heard that too going into it, and it made me intrigued.
Yeah.
That comment made me intrigued, but ultimately I agree that's not the vibe I got.
Yeah, there's an essence of like creeping around an old house and trying to discover things, and bookshelves moving, and clocks and stuff like that. But I don't know if that really constitutes fairy tale horror necessarily. But
no, it's housebound horror.
Yeah. I was shocked they filmed this in Bulgaria though, because I got a Detroit vibe, like
for sure,
very similar to Barbarian.
Well, certain parts of Detroit could be mistaken for third world countries, so I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that's why they filmed so many movies like It Follows and Only Lovers Left Alive and stuff like that there, 'cause of the dilapidation of some of these homes and stuff. But yeah, I caught some James Wan vibes in the way it was shot as well, with just the creepy house. I was seeing a little bit of Malignant and Insidious and some of his...
I would say, the Malignant side of James Wan, yes, especially towards the end. Yeah,
followed down staircases and different things, I thought was cool. So I mean, as much as I had issues with Malignant from a storytelling standpoint,
I like this better than Malignant personally.
I did too. Yeah, I definitely did, and I think it's, as you said, well, I'm not going to say it a third time, but check it out in theaters. I would say, even if I did have some issues with how they had some issues sticking the landing, I still found so much to appreciate from the acting and, I mean, just the filmmaking standpoints of it all.
Yeah, the ending was stuck. The landing was stuck a lot better with Talk to Me, but I think this one actually stuck this story's landing just fine.
Yeah.
If you don't appreciate what the last 25 minutes did, then yeah, the ending would probably be a little substandard. To me, I thought the ending was very appropriate for the story that played out. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. There was, speaking of the score, the score was ingratiating for sure. I would say the sound design, as we mentioned briefly earlier, was great, especially a dream sequence. There was this sound effect, and when it's revealed what it is, I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. And then, there's a bit of a sequence that was in the trailer that I thought was extremely unnerving because of the sound design. You see someone rushing at, down a hallway, the lights turn out, but you still hear the footsteps lumbering forward, but there's nothing coming out of the darkness, and like it's throwing you off, and like I really dug it. I thought the sound design was so fucking cool for this one. There was just a lot to really like in this. I have very few detractors outside of a few shots that were too CG looking in the last 25 minutes. And I think the reason I didn't have that problem with the Boogeyman is that they kept the malevolent force in the darkness for most of the third act of the Boogeyman while there was that sort of chase stuff going on. This was a bit more, in the light, and you can see the thing going on. They did a good job of hiding it for the most part, and like only showing you a bit of it as it creeps into or out of a room, but it was bright enough that you could tell, sometimes it felt like CG, although it could have just been a really well-trained contortionist, because that's very popular recently too. So
yeah, and that was one, like, where there's the initial reveal, I was like, okay, that looks quite CG, but then there's another bit later on where I was like, okay, so maybe that's not augmented, beefed up, whatever. So but yeah, man, as a whole, I found a lot more to enjoy about this than something that I can just kind of harp upon. And yeah, really great stuff. I'm curious with this director. Hopefully they get other opportunities. And it's unfortunate this isn't getting more attention. I've seen lots of our contemporaries and people we know here in the sphere saying kind of the same thing that have checked this one out.
Yeah, they're all liking it, and they're all saying it's a shame that it's not more readily available for people.
Yeah,
and I gotta be honest, it's gonna be in the running for the tops of the year. Right now, it's
in my 10. Yeah,
it's in my top 5 right now. It's one of the few that I've given 4 out of 5 stars to.
Yeah, it was 3.5 for me. But,
that's fair. I mean, I was wavering between the two, but when I compared it to the other 3 and 3.5 star movies, because I tend to be a bit more generous in my appraisals, perhaps, than other people, but it's up there. It's up there with with Talk to Me is up there for sure. We've had a couple of bangers this year. Honestly, we've had a few really good ones.
Yeah, From Black, Birth, Rebirth, Talk to
Black
Me. Those are a few that keep coming to mind. But we're over halfway through now. So, I mean, there's going to be an onslaught in the fall around October.
Or will there? Like, I mean, if they can't advertise, do you think...
I heard they're about to delay Dune, from what I'm hearing, because the actors can't do press for it.
Yeah, and what about Five Nights? I mean, Five Nights isn't going to be a actor-heavy press tour, necessarily, with Matthew Lillard or Josh Hutcherson.
Yeah,
they moved up Saw
X a month, so they're just like, okay, let's get this out with the quickness. But I mean, beyond Tobin Bell, I'm assuming, and the woman from the first 3 whose name eludes me, those 2 are really the only recognizable names I would imagine in
Shawnee
this.
Smith.
Oh, Shawnee Smith, yeah, Shawnee, yeah, that's right. So I don't know. I mean, with larger star power, if this continues to drag along, as a lot of people are speculating it's at least going to on the writer's side of things, the actors is where I've seen K. Smith and a few other people thinking it has a chance of getting figured out sooner. Who knows? We'll see.
I take back my thoughts on Five Nights. They'll probably just release that because, again, it's Matthew Lillard and Josh Hutcherson. Both aren't the most sought after actors for promotion or interviews and stuff like that. So the internet, like, Blumhouse is going to want to keep money coming in, and the internet is what's keeping Five Nights at Freddy's as hot as it is. It's not the actors doing press. So I think they could literally release Five Nights at Freddy's without an actor doing a single bit of press anywhere, and it'll still do fucking gangbusters. Because that audience is keyed into it. What's that?
And that's a dual release, right? I think it's theaters and Peacock same day, if I'm not mistaken.
No, is it?
It is, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, which a lot of people were kind of surprised by.
I'm going to the theater for it. I don't care.
They thought that trend had kind of died down a little bit, but yeah.
That's one movie I'm excited to review. Again, I'm not doing it for promotional purposes. I'm not being paid to do it. I just am really excited to see it because I love the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I'm excited about the next one that'll presumably be on our docket, being the Disney Haunted Mansion. You know,
I'm excited about that too. Yeah,
it's from
that was on my
Pirates
most
universe,
anticipated.
You reminded me of that yesterday. Yeah, so at some point after we post this review, that'll be the next one I think we're checking out. So
indeed. Again, not promoting it, just doing an honest review of it, because we all know how good the last Haunted Mansion movie was.
The one with Eddie Murphy. I don't even know if I ever saw it.
And Jennifer Tilly as the head in the crystal.
Well, I think Disney's been a little more willing, post Pirates, to kind of, cut loose in the
I agree.
13. And
the trailer feels like an actual legitimate Haunted Mansion movie, because it's got the ghost, the with the lantern, and then it's got the voice as the fucking the painting. Is this room getting longer? Like that kind of shit.
Yeah, and the cast is great too, which always helps.
Love Rosario Dawson.
Yeah, Owen Wilson, Danny
and
DeVito.
Lakeith Stanfield is supposedly the one that steals
awesome,
the
dude.
show, is what I hear.
He does in most movies that I've seen him in, man. I mean, in any event,
we're talking a lot about other movies. So.
But Cobweb. Even if I had a few issues with how the film concluded, I still really recommend it. So.
Agreed, 100%. I didn't have those issues that he did. I enjoyed the film quite a bit, and I think it's definitely worth your guys' time to go see in the theater.
Yeah.
So if you can, great. If not, if it's going to take you 2 hours to drive to a theater, that's up to you. That's up to you. But I'm excited for people to see this. If you have seen it, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Until next time, though, thank you very much for watching, and thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.